good? Erev Shabbos, everyone. I'm here at what will be our new Beit Knesset, our new outdoor facility. We put up the sails. We are going to have ready for Shabbat a space for us to have tefillah b'tzibor. It is very exciting to be back here, to be back in this space, and it also actually raises some challenges. What we know and what we love about our shul are some of the most critical and important values of our community, and we're not there, unfortunately. There are features of this tefillah b'tzibor, this communal tefillah, that do not exist yet, and so it presents for us some both excitement in what we are doing, but also some challenges. It made me think of a famous midrash on this week's Parshat Shelach, when the Meraglim, when the spies arrived in the land of Israel. They saw, the midrash tells us in such a fanciful way, they saw these giants, and they were lounging about eating a pomegranate, massive pomegranate. And when they were done with the pomegranate, the giant threw the shell to the floor. The message of the midrash isn't that littering is bad, even though littering is bad. But the giant threw the shell of the pomegranate to the floor. And the spies, the Meraglim, were so scared, they're so petrified, that they hid themselves away inside this shell. And the midrash identifies that it's at that moment when they're hiding inside the shell, that they're saying, "Anachnu k'chagavim," we're like grasshoppers. We're small, we're nothing in the eyes of these people. And the whole story in its entirety raises so many questions about values and about mission and about goals of the Jewish people, and where were they heading and what were they trying to do. But it's in that moment that we understand that the Jewish people are on a journey of transformation. A nation that for hundreds of years was oppressed in Egypt, was taken out by the Lord in wonder and in splendor, received 49 days later a structure to their society, received mitzvot, received values and a way to live life, are not quite ready to enter the promised land. And so when they get there, when they spy out the land, and they have to shelter for safety underneath the ruins, the garbage of the giants that are there, they don't view themselves as giants. They don't view themselves as able to take over the land. It makes me think about the survivors post-Holocaust, post-Shoah, who from a DP camp, from a displaced persons camp, arrived in what was then known as Palestine, and immediately received an army uniform and said, "Go fight the war of independence." That transformation to view oneself as a victim of the Shoah to a soldier in the Israel Defense Forces is such a major transformation. It takes the Jewish people 40 years and a generation to be transformed into giants, to be transformed into settlers, to be transformed into people who can cultivate and grow the most sweet, the most juicy pomegranates in the promised land. It's a major transformation, not in reality necessarily, not in ability necessarily, but in self-perception, in self-esteem, and how one thinks about oneself. When they were cowering in the shell of the pomegranate, those spies said to themselves, "They're not worthy of this land. They're nothing more than a small little grasshopper." And when they returned to the Jewish people in the desert, that was the message that they brought back. The message that God gives the Jewish people at Sinai. The message that the values of the Torah, of the mitzvot, the message of perhaps, I think, the moment that we're living through, is the value, the potential impact of every single life. That when we kind of sheltered ourselves in our homes over the last couple of months, the challenge was not to say, how small are we? We're like grasshoppers. The challenge, and I think many of us felt this. The challenge was to say, how precious is life? How impactful can an individual person be? And so while this Shabbat, our community won't be meeting in a way that we're used to. Many people will not be present over Shabbat, right? The days of 250 of us gathering in this space and children playing on this field, right? That's not returning this Shabbat, but it's not returning not because we are grasshoppers. It's not returning because we're small. It's not returning because we're scared. It's not returning because we value life, because we understand how important it is to be safe, how significant it is for us to do this well and to do this thoughtfully. And so we continue on our journey through the desert. We continue on our journey to the promised land, to be able to fulfill the obligations of Tefillah B'Tzibor, albeit this Shabbat in a modified way. But please God, in future weeks, in the most beautiful of ways, where as many people as possible will be present to celebrate Shabbat, to celebrate our life, to celebrate our relationship with God, to celebrate our community. We remain in ambiguous times. We remain in challenging times. Partially, we remain sheltered by the pomegranate. But we are saying to ourselves that we value life, we celebrate life, and please God, in the coming weeks, we will be able to return to more of the community we know and we love. Again, I thank you so much to each of you, to the many of you who messaged me to let me know that you're enthusiastic and you're cautious about what's coming next. And please God, we will have the opportunity in the coming weeks to start thinking about how we are going to gather again in more inclusive ways, in more expansive ways. This Shabbat is not the conclusion. This coming Shabbat, Tefillah B'Tzibor, is returning to our community in a limited way. But please God, very, very, very soon, we will be able to expand. We'll be able to increase the numbers, be more inclusive, and see many more of you on this patio, celebrating life, celebrating Shabbat, celebrating each other, and most significantly, celebrating our relationship with the Almighty, with God, who gives us life, who gives us healing, who gives us each other. Wishing everyone here a Shabbat Shalom. Again, if you're coming to a tefillah, if you've signed up for a tefillah on Shabbat, I look forward to seeing you. If you are around the neighborhood, please walk past on Shabbat. I would love to see you and wave. Wishing everyone a sweet, a healthy, a restful, and an inspiring Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.